All right, thank you, Kun Amarit Jarumpan and Kun Oranut Lert Suwangit. So now, I would like to introduce you, our guests of honor, to what is going on today in this huge facility that we have spread all over the 22nd and 23rd floor. So we have, first, the exposition room, which showcases an array of exciting displays from the leading and startup companies. Furthermore, apart from the main stage, we also have lots more interesting activities on the other stages. You've probably seen there are lots of little different stages scattered throughout the area. And this includes, and this is a long list, so bear with me, entertainment, music, esports, AR and VR and fashion, Google for startups, energy, clean tech, auto tech, artificial intelligence, and data science, financial technology and health technology, and also, deep breath, blockchain, smart cities, living tech, travel tech, fab tech, diversity and inclusion, social impact, startups, our tech showcases, which are very interesting, deep technology and clean technology, venture capital and workshops, and business matching. Whew. Okay, there's a lot going on. You've got to go to every single thing that you can because I know you want to squeeze all of the juice out of this conference. So if you want to plan your day, I suggest that you go to our very informative website, which is called the Techsauce Global Summit website. It is available by scanning a QR code, which you can see not up here, but all throughout the signage, just basically everywhere you walk around. Scan that, it'll take you straight to the website. And you can sort of plan how you want to spend your day because there are some tough choices. I was talking to someone and they were gutted because they were speaking somewhere else when there was something really interesting here that they wanted to see. But dims to breaks when you've got an amazing show like this. Now, for this year, we have some highlights that you definitely won't want to miss. So first, Google for Startups in Asia. Now, this is Thailand's first major collaboration between Google for Startups and Techsauce, so you don't want to miss out on that. Second, a special session with InfoFed to reveal all about the eSport ecosystem at the entertainment stage. Third, an exclusive session by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP's Global Development Support Agency on social impact. It's one of our main themes for presentations this year, and Citizen 4.0 will be discussed as well. Very interesting stuff there. And four, the highlight for our startup enthusiasts is, of course, the Techsauce Pitch Championships 2019. Now, the winner this year is going to take home a 1 million baht cash prize, which ain't nothing, right? And also, we have an exhibition zone and business matching where you can make plenty of connections, opportunities for your business, get to know people that you would never be able to meet from all over the world right here in one place. Don't forget, we want you to hashtag TSGS19 when you're talking about the amazing experience that you're having here today. We're confident that you will be having an amazing experience. And before we start our activities today, I would like to thank some very important people who are our wonderful sponsors. So, we would like to make a special thanks to DTAC Accelerate, Advanced Info Service, AIS, PTT Public Company Limited, Accenture, Adventures by SCG, Ananda Urban Tech, Bangkok Bank, Casacorn Business Technology Group, KBTG, Krungsi Finovate, Line Scale Up, Muang Thai Life Insurance, City Ventures, Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DIPA, the National Innovation Agency, or NIA, and Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, or TCEP. Now, apart from that, we would also like to thank our sponsors and partners, without whose support we would never be able to make this event happen. Well, let's start our day with an amazing keynote on a topic that I'm sure is on everyone's mind, the coming disruption, what everyone must know about AI and robotics. We're very excited to have with us today a remarkable author, a futurist of global renown, and a fantastic keynote speaker. So please welcome the futurist and author of Rise of the Robots, Technology and the Threat of a Jobless Future. Welcome to the stage, Mr. Martin Ford.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to be here at Techsauce. For over a decade now, I've been focused on the potential implications of technologies like artificial intelligence and robotics. And I've really come around to the view that we could very well be on the leading edge of just a massive disruption. And I think it's a disruption that is going to completely redefine the way businesses operate and compete. And I think ultimately, though, it's also going to put a tremendous amount of stress both on society and on our economy. Now, the central idea that I've really focused on, there are many implications of artificial intelligence, but the central thing that I focused on the most is this idea that smart algorithms, robots, machines are increasingly going to substitute for human workers. They're going to take over more and more of the work that's being done by people, and I do think that as that accelerates over the long run, that's going to lead to some real challenges for us. Now, as I've been engaged in this, doing my research, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of the really top people driving innovation in AI and robotics. In fact, in my most recent book that I just published at the end of last year, Architects of Intelligence, I had a chance to sit down and do deep interviews with 23 of the absolute smartest computer scientists working in AI. And what I found from this experience is that at least among these more technical people, there is kind of an emerging consensus that we may very well really be headed for a big disruption. Some people even believe that we might be poised to enter an entirely new era, a time when things are going to operate according to fundamentally different rules than what we've seen in the past. On the other hand, though, there's still a lot of skepticism out there about this whole idea that maybe this time is really different because of the impact of AI and robotics. And I think it's probably fair to say that economists as a group tend to be quite skeptical of the "this time is different" article. I'm going to guess that most of you have never heard of the Triple Revolution report, but this was actually a very prominent report that was written by a brilliant group of people that included 2 Nobel laureates. And this report was given to the President of the United States, and it argued that America was on the brink of total chaos, of social and economic upheaval, because industrial automation was going to put millions and millions of people out of work. Now, that report was given to President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. So it's now over 50 years ago, and of course that didn't really happen. What did happen is that the economy adjusted, new jobs were created, and everything sort of worked out. So there is good reason to be skeptical of this whole idea that we are on the verge of this massive disruption. But I personally believe that the technology is finally here and that we may well have a different outcome this time. And what I want to do is really lay out for you 3 important reasons why I think this technology is fundamentally different than what we've seen before. And the first thing, of course, is that we have had this ongoing process of exponential acceleration. And I think everyone's heard of Moore's Law, or this idea that computers roughly double in computing in power every 2 years or so, but it actually is much broader than that. It extends to software, to communications bandwidth, to memory capacity, and so forth. And this acceleration has been going on for a long time. It's been going on for decades. And what that means is that we're now at a point where things are going to move at an absolute pace that's just astonishing. So we're going to see things in the coming years and in the coming decades that really astound us, things that we're unprepared for. And the reason is that as a result of this accumulated acceleration, things are now moving so rapidly. The second thing I'd point to is that the machines, AI, smart algorithms, are beginning to take on true cognitive capability. They are, in a limited way, beginning to think. And by this, I don't mean science fiction artificial intelligence, but rather that machines are making decisions, they're solving problems, and most importantly, they're learning. In fact, if there's one technology that is really central to all of this and is kind of the driving force behind all of this, it's machine learning. And I think many of you have heard of examples of just how powerful this is. One thing I'm quite sure you heard about was in 2016 when AlphaGo system defeated Lee Sedol, the best Go player in the world. This really demonstrates that these systems are beginning to encroach in areas that we once would have thought as uniquely human. It is by no means equal to human level intelligence yet. That may lie far in the future, but still, these systems are doing things that are quite unprecedented, and that's going to get better and better, and it has unique implications going forward. The other important point is that artificial intelligence and IT more generally is becoming a true general purpose technology. It's becoming almost like a utility, almost like electricity. And what that means is it's going to disrupt everything. I mean, no one would ever ask what industries are most impacted by electricity. That seems almost like a silly question. Everything relies on electricity. And the same is eventually going to be true of artificial intelligence. It's going to impact every industry, every sector of the economy. It's basically going to impact everything in a very dramatic way, and I think that could lead to a different outcome than anything we've ever seen before. Now, one thing that people who are a bit skeptical about this will always point out is that, sure, a lot of the jobs that exist today might be upended, maybe even devastated, destroyed by technology, but at the same time, there'll be entirely new kinds of work created. There'll be jobs that today we can't even imagine. And that's certainly true. In fact, you can already think of jobs that exist now that not too long ago we wouldn't have been able to anticipate. Website designers, social media marketers, data scientists, these are all new kinds of work. But what this chart is showing, if you look at the bar chart on the right, is that the vast majority of our workers in the United States, about 90%, are engaged in occupations that existed 100 years ago. So this is something like driving vehicles, preparing and serving food, working in offices, doing routine things, working in healthcare as doctors and nurses, working in factories and warehouses. These are all occupations that someone in the year 1915 or so would have been quite familiar with. And yet they are still where the vast majority of our workforce is engaged. And it's easy to see going forward that a lot of these traditional forms of work are going to be disrupted. To take one obvious example, think in terms of self-driving vehicles, cars and also trucks. Once that technology arrives, it's going to potentially eliminate millions and millions of jobs. So this is something to be a bit concerned about. There doubtless will be new jobs created, but as this graph shows, they may not be enough of those to really absorb all the workers that lose work in more traditional areas. The other thing we'd want to worry about is that there could be a skill mismatch problem in the sense that, yes, there may be new jobs created, but maybe those jobs really require lots of education, lots of skill, and maybe they're really not a great match for the people that need a job. So going forward, I think that's a real issue. Here's one chart that shows, I think, that technology is already having an important impact. What you see here is a comparison of productivity, which is a measure of efficiency, in the United States versus compensation. And you can see that right up until the mid-1970s, these two lines moved together perfectly, and that's how it's supposed to work. The idea is that technological progress makes workers more effective, they should then command higher wages, and everyone is made better off. So you see it scale across the whole workforce and the whole population. And that happened right up until the mid-1970s, but then you see this line effectively decouple, and wages for most workers, most typical workers in the United States have basically been stagnant since then, but productivity has continued its relentless increase. And you see the same chart on the top left there in the United Kingdom, so it's also happening in other countries. I think personally this is part of the reason that Donald Trump is now the president of the United States, because this is a chart that makes many people angry. They feel that they've been left behind. But a big part of this is certainly driven by advancing technology, by machines that are becoming more autonomous, displacing workers, de-skilling workers, and that's what one of the most important forces is that's causing these wages to be stagnant. And the point I would make is that as technology accelerates, as artificial intelligence really becomes engaged with the economy, this could get much worse. Things could become even more unequal. We could see this big gap opening up even further and more people left behind, and this is a real concern. So let me talk a bit about some of the technologies that are really driving this. Robots, of course, have been around for a long time. Way back in the 1980s or so, if you had gone into an automotive factory in an advanced country, you would have already seen big, powerful industrial robots at work. These are very powerful, precise, fast machines. And all of this incredible automation has meant that in most developed countries, all of the truly rote, repetitive, assembly line type jobs have disappeared a long time ago. Those have already been automated. So what has been left for people in factories and warehouses has been jobs that are to some extent unpredictable, jobs that rely on things like visual perception and dexterity. One good example of that might be moving boxes, unloading and loading boxes in a factory. That's a job, at least until recently, could only be done by people. And you see a photograph here of one robot that's designed to move this stack of boxes, and it's basically a robotic arm with a machine vision camera on the end of it. You can see that these boxes are, stacked in kind of a haphazard way sometimes. They're different shapes and sizes, and they have text on them in different colors. Up until very recently, figuring out how to move these boxes would have been a visual perception and dexterity challenge that only a human being would have been able to solve. But here's a robot that is going to do it, and eventually is going to do it much better than any person can do it, and that's going to be very disruptive. Eventually, businesses that need this kind of work done are going to rely on machines rather than people. That's going to threaten, just in the US, hundreds of thousands of jobs, globally, millions of jobs. So that's a disruption that's coming down the line. Now, there's a conventional way of thinking about this kind of work which says that, lifting heavy boxes every day is not really such a great job. You could well injure yourself. Often people that do that kinds of work for decades, they end up disabled and then they can't work at all. So if a machine's going to come along and do that, that's not really a bad thing. We should celebrate that. And of course, there's always been a solution, which is we take the worker that loses this kind of job and we give that person more training, more education. They can move up the skills ladder. Maybe they end up working in an office instead of on the loading dock, and they're in a much more comfortable work environment. But what I want to show you next is the reason that maybe this way of approaching that problem is not going to be so sustainable, and this is focused on what you might call white-collar automation, or really the automation of more skilled work using artificial intelligence and software automation. If you look at the bar chart on the right here, it's showing you the head count, the number of employees in the corporate finance department in the largest US corporations. And you can see that over a recent 10-year period, it actually went down by about 40%. Almost half those jobs disappeared, and it happened as a result of smart software that's doing more routine, white-collar work. And this, you can see in this graph, goes all the way back to 2004. So this is not artificial intelligence. It's not the really advanced things that I'm talking about here. It's just more rudimentary forms of software automation. So the real impact of AI and machine learning really lies in the future. So the point is that this could be even more dramatic, and we can envision a future where almost any kind of routine white-collar work where you sit in front of a computer and you manipulate information in some routine way, cranking out the same report again and again, or doing the same kind of analysis, all of that is going to be susceptible to automation, and that, of course, is going to impact not blue-collar workers, not low-skilled workers, but very often people that have university degrees, people that do, in fact, have lots of skills and lots of education. So this does have the potential to be very disruptive in a way that we've never seen before. Now, one other point that I really try to emphasize, because I think it's very important, is that if we do see a future where a lot of jobs simply disappear, or maybe other jobs are de-skilled so that now people at low wages can do that job, so wages get driven down, that's going to be a big problem for society. It's going to be a big problem for workers and their families. But beyond that, it's also a fundamental economic problem. And the reason is that the market economy needs to have consumers. It needs to have people with the income and the confidence to go out and buy the products and services that the economy is producing. If you don't have that, then you run the risk of having a situation where there simply isn't enough economic demand out there, where businesses can't find viable customers for the products and services that they're selling. And at best, that could lead to kind of an economic stagnation where you see low rates of growth. At worst, you could actually have kind of a downward deflationary spiral where businesses just can't find customers who have money to buy what they're selling. So then they start cutting their prices. They start laying off even more workers. And then you get into kind of a deflationary economic scenario, which is really quite scary. And I think that there's some evidence to suggest that we already see some level of stagnation as a result of increasing inequality, which is the result of technology. We've seen many countries throughout the world that had relatively low rates of growth, especially in Europe, in Japan. Many countries where interest rates are very low. In the United States, interest rates have been very, very low for a long time, in spite of the fact that unemployment is very low, which is historically quite unusual. So there's something going on which is unusual in the economy, and I think that at least in part that could well be due to the inequality produced by technological advance and the fact that people in some cases simply don't have the income and the confidence to really be vibrant consumers. So this is something that I think policymakers and investors and all of us should keep in mind going forward, that this is potentially a problem that doesn't just impact a few people that lose their jobs or even a lot of people that lose their jobs, but really it's a problem for everyone. It impacts really whether capitalism itself can continue to thrive. So then the next question becomes, what exactly can we do about all of this? And you can kind of think about it on two levels. I think if you're an individual and you want to know what can you do to protect yourself in your career, or maybe you're worried about your children, you're thinking what should they study, the best advice I can give is to avoid things that are fundamentally routine and repetitive and predictable. Because we know that these things, whether they're high-skilled jobs or low-skilled jobs or blue-collar jobs or white-collar jobs, they are going to be much more susceptible to automation going forward. So the thing to do is to emphasize things like creativity, roles where you're really generating new ideas, where you're building something entirely new. These are things that at least so far machines are not so good at. The other area that's very important is things that require building sophisticated relationships with other people, or having empathy for other people, or really having that human element, something like a nurse, for example, where you're working with patients and you have to care about patients, or someone in the business world where you're building very sophisticated relationships with clients. These are things that machines are not so good at, and these are the kinds of areas that you want to emphasize in your own career and also in your children's education. But then the next question becomes, what do we do as a society? Because it's great to give advice, what you should do, but we know that not everyone is going to be lucky enough to act on that advice successfully. A lot of people seem likely to be left behind, and we're going to have to figure out a solution to that. And I think ultimately it's going to require thinking in terms of providing at least a minimal income to everyone, independently of whether they have a job or not. And the best approach to that is some kind of a universal basic income. In other words, giving everyone a guaranteed income of some kind. And that's an idea that is really getting a lot of traction, a lot of focus throughout the world. It's definitely still a very radical idea. It's new. No country has ever tried it on a broad scale basis. There have been experiments in a number of places that have been reasonably successful, but it is, I think, a very, very important idea for the future. You're going to see a lot more attention given to it. Actually, in the United States, there is now a presidential candidate, Andrew Yang, who's not one of the front runners, obviously, but he's actually going to get to participate in the presidential debates, and he'll be introducing this idea of a universal basic income. So I think that over the course of the next few years, a lot more people are going to be familiar with this idea, and they're going to be thinking about it. And I think it's a very, very important idea for the future in terms of building a society that works for everyone and not just for a few people right at the top. So finally, I've of course been talking a lot here about the challenges that are going to come with AI and robotics, especially in terms of pressure on the job market. But I really want to make it clear that overall, I think AI is an enormously powerful, positive force that can make us all better off. And what I have here is a quote from a guy by the name of Demis Hassabis, who is the CEO of DeepMind. That's the company that built the AlphaGo system, the one that that beat Lee Sedol at the game of Go. And what Demis is saying here is that his goal is to first solve artificial intelligence and then use that to solve everything else. And I think that's really what we're talking about here. AI is going to become the most powerful tool we have to solve the biggest problems that we face. Things like breakthroughs in medicine, things like climate change, things like new sources of clean energy and so forth. Artificial intelligence is going to become an incredibly powerful resource to help us advance in all of these areas and solve some of the biggest problems that we face. So the main point I would make is that we certainly don't want to give up that potential. We want to make sure that we leverage this potential on behalf of everyone, but that means having an honest discussion and a debate about some of the challenges that are going to come along with artificial intelligence, in particular, the impact on the job market. So my point in coming and talking to you and also writing about all of this is to get you thinking about this. I hope that you will engage in this discussion, engage in this debate, talk to others, make other people aware of these issues so that we can all collectively begin to have a conversation. And I hope that as we have that conversation, we will generate some new ideas that will allow us to build a future society and a future economy that works for everyone, where no one is left behind, where everyone benefits from the incredible potential of these technologies. Thank you very much.